Betsy appeared. Dr. Stanberry disappeared. Oh, he finally got loose. He's coming in the studio at this time. Tall Betsy loses again. He escaped.
We're from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation, they no choice.
The Republican candidate for governor.
Okay, that was over last time.
Trick or treat. Did you have any trick-or-treaters last night at your house?
I think we did. I was at the block party.
Oh, okay. You think you did. You're in the prime trick-or-treating spot in the world.
The last time we did it big time, we handed out a single piece to each trick-or-treater, and we gave out over 8,000 pieces of candy.
You sound like Alan Jones. Alan gives him one piece of bubble gum so he can keep count.
Well, by the way, that will get you cussed out, too. Instead of thank you for giving me anything, it's let me cuss you out for only giving me one piece. Well, when you have 8,000 trick-or-treaters, it's a little cost prohibitive.
Somebody said when you lived on Centenary Avenue, if you ever bought a house on Centenary Avenue, you had to put that into your payment plan.
I don't know. We're between people walk by from Centenary Avenue to downtown, so we just get.
I tell you, I think the crowd downtown was probably as big as it's ever been last night. It was really packed, I thought.
I don't think it was anywhere near as big as when Little Richard was here and you know, some of those events.
Well, it was crowded on the streets around downtown, I can tell you that.
A little nicer crowd. Wasn't quite as rowdy this year. It didn't seem to be.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I sat at a little Halloween party last night and was surrounded by Democrats. I didn't know we had that many in Cleveland.
Well,
no, an old lost person that I hadn't seen in years, Donna Hubbard.
I've seen her a few times in the last year.
Donna's out and about.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her much in several years, but anyway, we got to talk a little politics last night. I thought that was interesting.
Well, did they go ahead and have a county convention since they were all there in one house?
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
Okay.
That wasn't very nice.
All I can tell you is everybody told me they was going to be listening this morning. So
We had
I told them, I said, that's a lie. You can't get up that early.
We had a celebrity at our Republican Party booth last night.
Oh, who's that?
Bernie Sanders was there. He approved our message.
Oh,
It looked a little toasty around the edges.
I think I saw Donald Trump running around too. But
I bet you saw a few Donald Trumps last night. I have a feeling.
We had a corpse labeled Bernie Sanders.
Okay. Burn.
The bad part was he kind of looked like Bernie.
Oh, goodness. What do you think we ought to talk about today? You guys got anything you want to talk about calmly? I don't feel like a big loud discussion right now.
Okay.
Let's calmly talk about why the courthouse didn't have a monitored fire alarm and why no one on the county commission seems to be interested in asking that question or in the news media.
Well, I think somebody was interested in it. They sent a letter to the courthouse, didn't they?
Tell us what you
Well,
think.
but that's the point. We've had multiple stories, and they've all been about who posted the letter. I don't know who posted the letter. I don't care who posted the letter. First off, it's not illegal to post the letter. Mm-hmm. And secondly, the real question is, why in the world would you have a building that's unoccupied at night and unoccupied on the weekends with a non-monitored fire alarm?
Maybe they thought it wouldn't burn. It's block, isn't it? Isn't it a concrete building?
Well, it's a concrete building, but there's a lot of stuff that burns in a concrete building. And when you have a fire like they did in an area that has an air duct, guess what happens to the smoke? It goes everywhere, and that's why the whole building was damaged, mm-hmm. as well as the water that had to be put in there. But the point is, why would you not have a monitored fire alarm? And what is wrong with our level of journalism in this area when you can write a huge story and never ask, by the way, was the alarm monitored?
Can I answer your question?
What?
When the fire started, it's my understanding that about 10,000 people were fanning it. They've been trying to get rid of that ugly courthouse for years. Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, that is something interesting to think about. I was at one of the satellite offices that all of these different departments have had to fan out to, and I mentioned that someone told me, said, hey, I had to go down and do X, and I had to find the office, and I thought they were going to complain about having to find the office, and they said, I loved it. It was so much easier to park, so much easier to get in. But when I won't say because they don't have permission, but when I told this county elected official that, they said 90% of the people that have been in since have said they loved us in an off-site position, and I'm not sure all of them will come back to the courthouse.
Well, the where you get your
Tags.
license plates and so forth down here at the village, and I understand everybody loves it.
Well, I had someone said, I pulled through and I saw a big line in there to get the tags. I pulled through the drive-through and I got my tags and went on my way. That's what they said.
Ooh, drive-through tags.
So this person was excited that they were able to pull up, do their business, and drive off.
Well, it's
Now the courts are different, I think.
well, it's a difficult thing to address because the downtown has actually been doing pretty well lately. There have been a lot of new businesses that have opened up down there in the last 2 years. Some of them who have lasted, and so you're talking about taking some of the constituents for those businesses away too. And if you go up to say Athens, whose courthouse square is virtually dead, and they moved a lot of their court activities and government stuff out, and they've just bought a building and are moving them back in. Now, I think for that reason. So it's a hard question to answer.
Well, now somebody told me that the courthouse was always supposed to eventually be solely courtrooms. You know anything about that?
I have not heard that. I don't know that.
That'd be nice if it was.
I mean, we've had.
But Franklin's right. You generate a lot. A, we're saying, the traffic is tough because there's nowhere to park. But B, you generate the traffic in the area, and that feeds the commercial development.
And a healthy downtown is a nice thing.
So, to be honest, that is one of the things that gets missed in almost any discussion anybody has. There are always pluses and minuses to everything. You add here, you take away there.
Including the alarm system at the courthouse. There's a plus and a minus.
Yeah, the minus would be $20 a month because we can't afford that. But what did this cost us?
Well, the plus could have been maybe they ought to just tear it down and build us a new one.
Well, we made that mistake once in the 60s.
I don't think it'd be a mistake if we did it again, would it?
It's an ugly building, but, it's paid for.
Okay. And
maybe.
hey, and it's a good place for parties downtown, right?
Well, I mean, the front lawn left space for a stage. So
Hey, did the Democrats have a booth downtown?
they did.
Who'd they have there, Bernie?
I don't know.
Did Bernie go by and visit
I
them?
didn't go by. I was busy working ours.
I didn't go to the block party last night, so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
How many people were at the Republican booth?
Well, we were full. You get a 10 by 10 little square there.
Well, usually the scariest places do get the most traffic.
I think all the Democrats were over at Presswood's house last night.
They may have been. From what I heard, they had people at their booth.
How many Democrats are there in Cleveland, Franklin?
Oh,
47.3.
Oh, Lord. What do you think? Hey, today we're going to get our tax proposal from the GOP, right?
we are?
I think, isn't that coming out today?
I don't know. I've been
I hadn't heard that.
Proposed tax proposal.
been watching the news about the terrorist attack.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's something real quick we can touch on. The guy's been here in America since 2010. He's illegal.
Well, CNN managed to blame Donald Trump for it. So,
Well, Hillary Clinton's blaming Fox for everything right now. All of her problems. She's promoting her book against Fox.
well, it's clear after he got out and he yelled Allah Akbar before he attacked, and the fact that his first name actually means Sword of Allah.
And he left a note in
It's
the car.
very clear from all of that we should be scrutinizing the Amish much stricter. Those Amish are a real threat.
What about the Benghazi militant captured?
Well, I hope they prosecute him and execute him.
I thought it was Interesting.
What?
It was interesting that they didn't decide to take him to.
I'm really confused about it. Is that a law that Obama put in place? They had to take him to
No,
for a trial.
No, they can.
they have the option of doing it. It's just when Obama did it, it was a horrible threat to the country.
I agree. I think
No,
it
I
is.
still think it's a threat, and I think it's a mistake.
Why would they do that?
Well, one of the reasons is a lot of these decisions get made by career people. And the career people in almost every branch of government tend towards the left side of the political spectrum.
They want to stand up there and ask a bunch of questions and look pretty on TV. Again?
I would much rather see him at Guantanamo in a military tribunal, which is what I wanted all of them done.
And they ought to milk him for information.
I agree.
What? I mean, who ordered this to go to Washington?
I'm sure somebody made the call
Who would it call come from? Who would ultimately have
Well,
that
they
decision?
had the stories that I've read is that over the course of the last 6 months that they'd had 2 previous opportunities to apprehend this, and they had purposefully not apprehended him because they were surveilling him and using him for intelligence purposes to see where he goes and who he was associating with. And so then when they did, they made the decision to bring him here. I would assume that both the military and the Justice Department would be involved in that.
We got a call.
Hey, we've got.
Go ahead, caller.
We have 1 million laws, and I think they ought to be a law for people throwing off on the president. He's the highest man in the United States. These people on TV and people throwing off on Trump, movie stars, football players, basketball. We got all these rules and regulations. I think it ought to be against the law for people to throw off on President Trump. I think he's doing a great job. They ought to have you get a year in prison or something other throwing off on that man right there. That man's got a hard job right there to have to put up with this nonsense people throwing off on him.
You think they're throwing off?
Have a good day, and I enjoy listening to y'all on Wednesday.
All right. Thanks for calling. Yeah, somebody think that unfair all this propaganda's going on against our president. What do you got to say, Franklin? I know you just want to say something.
Well, it's not a job you ought to take if you don't expect to be criticized.
I think Trump handles it pretty well. Yeah, we got a caller. Hung up. All right. I'm still trying to figure out who would make that decision to take this prisoner for an American trial.
I mean,
Would it be the president?
No,
It could be,
It certainly could, but it probably didn't rise to that. And that's the problem. The government has to function seamlessly. So when you turn administrations over, you don't want everybody under, from the president down to flip over. So you have career people, and they have tracks.
I would suspect that that decision, though, would be either fairly high in the Defense Department or the Justice Department. I mean, I think that would be a big deal.
I'd say that Mattis or the CIA, somebody had some oversight over that.
I'd agree with that.
But now keep in mind, and I'm not criticizing, I like killing people that are enemies of the country as well, but Obama would have targeted this guy with a drone strike and we would have lost the information. I think and I didn't know this until Franklin told us, I think it's encouraging that they followed the guy, identified him, followed him, milked him for information, and now I hope they take him somewhere, pull his fingernails off until he tells us more information. Because personally, and I've said this on the air, I'm okay with torturing terrorists.
I am too. How about you, Franklin? Should we not torture them?
Well, no, we shouldn't torture them.
Should we? Is waterboarding torturing?
No.
Well, I saw an interesting interview during Ken Burns' The Vietnam War story with some American POWs who had been waterboarded in Vietnam, and they felt pretty strongly that it was torture.
We waterboard our own people to train them for the way they're going to be treated by the
A
enemy.
Navy SEAL's trained that way.
Well, just Navy Flyers do. We had a program at Rotary Club where a local doctor was a Navy Flyer, and they were waterboarded.
Somebody sent me an email, and it's pretty interesting. I really don't know if it's positively true, but it sounds good, and I thought I'd share it with you. talking about the NFL players taking a knee, and basically, I'll try to shorten this. Basically, they need to look at what they're really protesting. They're wanting things to be better for the blacks and for, I guess, their people, whatever. But this is about taking a look at the NFL players that have multiple children and left them fatherless. And, I mean, for example, Antonio Comarte has 12 children by 9 different women. Also, Travis Henry has 11 children.
Not the local
attorney.
Travis Henry, the football player, has NFL football player, has 11 children by 10 women. Willis McGahee has 9 children by 8 different women. Derek Thomas has 7 children by 5 different women. Benny Blades has 6 children by 6 different women. Ray Lewis has 6 children by 4 women. And Marshall Falk has 6 children by 3 women. You know, when you really think about that, if you look at these kids that are being put into a fatherless home,
which is a devastating strike against your productivity probably for your whole life.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure these guys make a lot of money, and they're probably paying some kind of support towards this.
You would hope so, but I wouldn't necessarily guarantee you that.
Well, that's true. But, you know, I think there's ways to fix these problems without taking a knee to the national anthem. And if you take a strong look at the education side of it, and not producing these. No, wait a minute. They're getting these girls pregnant, and then they're getting over here on the welfare program we're raising.
I'm not disagreeing with the premise of that, but I will say that there's a problem in the email that you just read.
Well,
almost all of those players are former NFL players who are no longer. They were not part of this protest that you were talking about.
Fine, but you know what it actually does say? Mm-hmm. It says that there are issues in not just the black community, but in a lot of communities that are probably actually more at root for some of the problems with poverty, the problems with drug abuse, the problems with crime, and we would be much better served if we would look at our culture and see what we could do about our culture to fix some of these, rather than trying to pit one group against the other.
Some of these girls are referred to as baby mamas.
Well, I'm sure they view it as if I get him on the hook, he's got money, I'll have money.
Or they
never mind what it does to the child.
Or they go down here. The more kids they have, the more they
money
can draw.
They get. There is an incentive in the programs as well.
Do you think that the program? Do you think that we should pay for more than 2 illegitimate children on any kind of welfare program?
I've said all along, now that you have the ability to do Norplant and implantable pregnancy prevention means that is reversible. I've always said that the government, if I'm going to pay for your baby, I'll pay for the first one. After the second one, we're putting Norplant in, and you're not having any more unless you can take care of them yourself.
Well, then if they take it out and get pregnant again, what happens?
Well, that's the problem, because you can't then look at a child and say, well, you have to starve because your mother made a bad decision. But all of this is about how you lean the culture, how you aim the culture. You know, it's never going to be absolutely correct. But right now, we're leaning the culture towards complete irresponsibility. Have as many children as you want, and somebody else will take care of them somewhat.
I've heard people talk about giving them a reward for not having children. If they sign up on a program, we pay them more money not to have children.
Let me throw this out at you, though. There are cities that have started paying people not to commit crime. Personally, I don't think that's a good plan either.
Paying them not
to. They're paying gangs.
Is this California?
No, I believe this was Chicago and New York. Paying gang members not to commit crime. That reminds me of the farmer's letter that said, I am going in the not raising corn business. I will not be raising 200 acres of corn.
Because they get paid to not raise
They paid farmers not when they play in the market.
Right.
So when they feel like the hogs are glutted, the market's glutted, they pay hog farmers not to raise hogs, not to grow corn.
Well, we've done that for years with agricultural products.
Well, I think it's a mistake. Republican or Democrat, I think they need to get out of it. Now, we had a candidate, Ted Cruz, went into Iowa and said he opposed the corn subsidies. And again, from a principled standpoint, a farmer got up and actually said, look, I support you, even though I get the corn subsidies. Iowa's a huge corn subsidy state. He said, but what about the oil companies that get subsidies? And Cruz, to his credit, went, I'm against that too. I think the government ought to be out of the business of picking winners and losers. Nowhere in the Constitution, and I know we twist it, nowhere does it say that the government ought to be paying people to do or not do business.
Should government be run like a business?
When it's doing something, it should be run as much like a business as possible, but it's not a business.
What is it?
Government? Mm-hmm. It's a necessary evil.
It's a service.
It's a necessary. It's the worst form of government in the world, except for all the others. You know, Winston Churchill.
Frankly, I'm giving you opportunities to speak this morning.
I'm just listening to John. I'm enthralled with everything he has to say.
Well, I was informed at this Democratic Party I went to last night that government was a service, and that, you know.
Well, the police department is a service.
Yeah.
The fire department's a service. Paving roads is a service.
Agree or
The
disagree?
problem is those things
Schools
are all
are services.
right, but those are all local services. The problem is the federal government really, according to the Constitution, has very limited authority to do things. What's happened is all through the 1800s, the Supreme Court actually used the 10th Amendment to hold huge chunks of things that the politicians wanted to buy votes with at bay. Once Franklin Roosevelt basically broke the Supreme Court, the 10th Amendment has just completely dropped off of the map as far as anything that the Supreme Court considers.
Should the federal government provide a tax subsidy for the NFL to build new stadiums?
They shouldn't.
That's a good find, I thought. I think Trump should be a hero.
It's not so much a tax
for bringing
subsidy. They exempted them from the antitrust laws.
Well, they actually pay
That's
them.
that's what the big thing for the NFL is.
But they
They're
also
not
get
subject to the
direct
same-
taxpayer money too, though.
Do what now?
They get direct taxpayer money as well.
Well, they shouldn't, should they?
No, they shouldn't.
Should they? Frankly?
No, but I'm not sure what direct tax money they get. They get a
Well,
lot of
when
it from
we
local
actually,
governments.
Obama actually began paying them to do the national anthem. Up until 2000 and I believe it was 11, they kind of hit and miss did the anthem. The Obama Department of Defense actually started paying them. So they are actually paid to do that.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Now, wait a
Okay.
minute. You got to be kidding.
I brought it up on the show years ago. The government actually pays these teams. Before that, that's what's funny about all of this. Before we started paying them, some of them did it, some of them didn't. There were no real rules. Most of the players were not on the sidelines for it. They were in the locker rooms. The Obama administration began actually paying these multi-million-dollar team owners to make public spectacles of the national anthem.
It was a marketing thing.
And they still get
for
it.
the United States government?
Yes.
Trying to help promote patriotism, but really promoting recruiting for the military is what it's doing.
It was angled towards the military.
Okay.
But that's when and that's what's frustrating about these team owners. That's when they started requiring the players to be on the sidelines. So all of this BS you see them talking
You ever
about
go
now.
to a Vols game? The players are not out on the field when they do the national anthem.
But for the owners now, because I think there's blame to go around everywhere with this. For the owners to be all, oh, we're patriotic. No, you're not. You weren't patriotic until the government started paying you to do this.
This national anthem for every sporting event is a relatively new phenomenon. It's not something we've traditionally done.
Well, it was always played when I played ball. When I played ball on the football field, they played it.
By the way,
everywhere I went.
the only Major League Baseball player to take a knee, he was a player with the Oakland A's, has now been arrested for assault with a deadly weapon.
Yeah. What do you think about George Washington's church taking plaques out of the church sanctuary where he sits, recognizing where he sat and went to church, and then taking a plaque off the building outside or somewhere out there recognizing George Washington?
I didn't see it, so I don't know.
It's Christ Church in Falls Church, Virginia.
Yeah.
George Washington was a parishioner and one of the main sponsors of the church. Church has been there for hundreds of years. Robert E. Lee was another church attender who was actually a big benefactor of the church. So there were two plaques up. There was a plaque honoring George Washington, and what it was honoring was their service to the church. So there was also a plaque for Robert E. Lee. The church made these statements. The rectory voted to take them down and move them. They don't know where they're going to move them. They're going to put them somewhere else. But they just said that they were afraid that people might see them and be offended by them and not come to church, not be willing to come to church.
What's changed that all of a sudden? Now, these plaques have been there
They've been there since about 1870 something.
Why all of a sudden should
Political correctness.
correctness?
And the liberal side of the spectrum.
Well, that church has had a very, I'm not going to use the word controversial, it's not right, but they broke themselves off from the Episcopal Church a few years ago, 7 or 8, 9 years ago. They were one of the churches that voted to not be formally affiliated with the Church of England and don't send any money to support that
they
anymore.
reorganized under the diocese in Africa.
Do what now?
They reorganized. What happened was the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is the head of the Church of England, came out and basically endorsed gay marriage and actually talked about Sharia law, that he thought it was inevitable that Sharia law would come to place in Great Britain. And a lot of the more conservative Episcopal churches said, look, we don't want to be under this guy. We don't want to be under this authority. So they broke off, and the Episcopal Church diocese that is over all of Africa is much more conservative. A lot of them remained independent, but a lot of them reorganized under the diocese in Africa.
What do you think that church bench?
And by the way, then the Church of England sued them for their property.
Yeah, 90. I just looked this up. 90% of the parishioners voted to separate from the Church of England.
Well, I mean, I understand about that. I mean, a lot of the Episcopal churches around the country have had problems with some of this stuff.
What does that have to do with this, though, Franklin?
I'm just saying, it's been a very a church congregation that was concerned with a lot of different issues. Wouldn't surprise me that they have this view.
Well, actually, I think it actually says somewhat the opposite of what Franklin's impugning to it, because I think this is the apparently the church. I don't know I'm not an Episcopal, so I don't know what they call it, but it's their board of directors. I think you'll find a church that voted 90% to leave the diocese over conservative versus liberal interpretations of Scripture probably is not going to be happy with their board of directors doing this.
Let me ask you something. What do you think that pew's worth that George Washington said at in the plaque?
That's probably where if you were to sell
if they were going to take it out, won't they just put it up for public auction and raise some money for their
Sure,
church?
it's worth a lot of money, but there's a bigger issue here that's important. Franklin probably would agree with this. This proves Donald Trump was absolutely right 2 or 3 months ago when he said, what's next? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
Now you think about that. He gave a speech when we were talking about the Confederate monument. But what did he say? He said, where is this movement going? It's going down the road that will eventually lead to our founding fathers.
I haven't found anything that Donald Trump has talked about that's wrong yet. I think he's been right on just about everything.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. Whoop FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Checking the cash, you got a brand new choice. Our flexible loans really making noise. Flex your money, my soul. Flex your money, my soul.
A check into cash flex loan puts you in control. Visit your nearest store for details.
Shape a flex loan to fit your needs. Make your next loan a flex loan and set yourself free. Flex your money muscle at checking the cash.
Some restrictions apply. See store for details.
Yeah.
This is Teresa Gilbert from the Village Bank Shop in Cleveland, Tennessee. Do you have a birthday, wedding, or anniversary coming up and want that perfect cake? Need some donuts to sweeten up your coworkers? Want to surprise your sweet thing with a bag of cookies? Then come on over to the Village Bake Shop. Family operated since 1961, the Village Bake Shop is your first and last stop for fresh baked goods that will feed your sweet tooth. The Village Bake Shop located at the Village Green Town Center. The phone number here is 423-476-5179. See you soon.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
We're here at the Trane Heating and Air Conditioning Testing Facility to see how unstoppable their products really are.
Inside this climate chamber, it's raining incredibly hard on this Trane AC unit. Clearly, it's hard to stop the train.
Ready for a heating and air unit that's been tested in the harshest environments possible? Stop thinking about the other guys and get a Trane. Call Mechanical Systems today to get your home on the road to comfort. 336-5739.
Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Matthews Pool and Spa Company, located in Cleveland, Bradley County for over 45 years. You know them. They're your new swimming pool construction and supply company in Cleveland, Tennessee, now with 4 generations of Matthews to serve you. Matthews Pool and Spa Company, for over 45 years, your swimming pool construction and supply company, spa or hot tub installation and maintenance. Get all of your supplies for your pool or spa right now. That's the new location in the old Quinn Electric Company building behind KFC at 2724 Keith Street in Cleveland. Call Matthews now, 476-4521. You better get your order in now for your new pool construction for this spring and summer. 476-4521. Matthews Pool and Spa Company. Gonna jump in. Woo!
Come join us at the Bald-Headed Bistro for Cleveland's fastest growing dinner event. Join us every month for our supper club presented by Chef Eric Fulkerson. Spots are limited, so reserve yours in advance. We can't wait to see you here.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
Welcome back to Backfire with Franklin Chansey and John Stanberry, and of course myself, Steve Football Hickson. There's a TV ad that's been out. Have you seen it, Franklin? It's an attack on Ed Gillespie, running for Virginia governor from his opponent, the Democratic opponent.
I mean, the scare tactics they're using.
Have you seen that?
An attack on Ed Gillespie?
Well, it's a scare tactic ad.
It's a scare tactic ad towards the GOP. Let me rephrase it.
They've linked him to white supremacists and attacks on immigrants.
Yeah, they had immigrant children being scared from a pickup truck that looked like it was going to come down the street and run over them, and they're all running to get away from it.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of a weird ad, isn't it?
Actually, the ad makes perfect sense if you understand what's going on in the dynamics of the race.
Ed
Gillespie has now taken the lead, and they're terrified that they won't gin up enough turnout among the minority community, so they're trying to scare them to death.
Trying to stir the stir up some votes.
Which is, what do you call, I think, identity politics, isn't that
Which
what
is
you call
what
it?
Gillespie had done.
No, he hasn't
I mean,
done
I
that.
think I could
He
do
did
it.
a
I think
story
I,
on MS-13.
He didn't do a story. He ran a bunch of commercials.
On MS-13 and the violence, which is exploding in Virginia.
And ran them all over rural Virginia where there
Because
are no
the
gangs.
MS-13 is exploding in Virginia, and it's a real issue, and Northam has been weak on that.
Okay.
It's an issue. These ads that the Democrats are running are not issues. They're clearly racial smears meant to motivate
That's
minority
what I would
voters.
say about Gillespie's ad.
Is MS-13 an
Now,
actual group?
Is it an actual group? Yes.
Are they actually in Virginia?
In one city.
Have crime rates gone up involving MS-13?
Well, presumably, since they weren't there before, that would make sense.
So why is that an illegitimate issue?
Well, why are you running those commercials in rural Abingdon, Virginia, where there is no gangs?
Because there was an MS-13 where they're at now a few years before.
You could make the argument if you're running it in the areas of the state where this is actually.
Well, let me
an
ask
issue.
you a question,
In the
Franklin.
areas where it's not, it clearly has a.
Is
different
Dalton,
purpose.
Georgia, a major metropolitan area or a rural area?
I would think it would fall within a metropolitan
No,
area.
it wouldn't. It's a rural area. It's North Georgia. It's a small little town. And guess what? MS-13's there.
Okay.
And a real problem. Matter of fact, that's the headquarters in this region for MS-13. So that's why he ran the ads in rural areas.
Okay.
Well, and by the way, Northam is on the verge of losing this state, and that's they're panicked. The Democrats are panicked in Virginia.
The gangs are spreading into the rural areas.
And by the way, Franklin, did you ever give us an opinion on why the Northam campaign stripped the black lieutenant governor from their campaign literature?
I don't know if that's true or false.
It is
so I
absolutely
haven't
true.
given you an opinion about it because I don't know anything about that.
Explain what you're talking about.
They sent out they have a candidate running as part of the ticket.
Who does?
With Northam, the Democrats in Virginia. He is a black man. He is I believe, a state senator, and he's running to be the lieutenant governor.
Okay.
And he was on their campaign literature. There were 3 people, 2 white men, and him. He was in the middle. A local union doesn't like him, and so they asked for them to remove him from the campaign flyers. And the Northam campaign, the Democrat campaign for governor in Virginia, removed the black candidate, their own candidate, from the flyers and then sent them out minus him. Now, Franklin, please tell me that if a Republican did that, you wouldn't claim that was racism.
I would claim it was very bad judgment by the Northam.
It's racist, and it's racist on the Democrats' part.
Well, I'm glad you recognize the concept.
Well, I would think if I was the black guy, I'd file a lawsuit against somebody.
It's his own party.
But I
Who's
don't
he going to
care.
sue?
His own party.
Well, that's part of their problem. They are not connecting with the minority community because they've made 2 racist mistakes. They edited him out of their campaign literature, and then they attacked a Hispanic woman Republican and compared her to serial killers in a flyer they sent out.
Leaks from the Department of Justice. They're going to get serious about this.
Well, they
all
should have a long time ago.
all of a sudden, they're going to get serious about leaks coming out of the Department of Justice.
What leak are we referring to?
All kinds of leaks, evidently. I mean,
What were they?
well, there was something.
There really haven't been many.
Well, this FBI agent that's running the investigation now. What's
Mueller?
Yeah, Mueller.
Uh-huh.
There was leaks that came out about him, even
What leaks?
going to the grand jury. There was grand jury leaks coming out.
Well, it wasn't.
Department of
It
Justice.
wasn't much of a leak.
They
that's
actually
for
don't
sure.
think those leaks. They said he's actually ran somewhat of a tight ship with that. They don't think those leaks
I've
came.
been shocked by how little
Well,
information has
let me
come
say,
out.
they
of
don't think those leaks came from the Justice Department. They think they actually came from the courthouse where the grand jury was impaneled.
Yeah, it's been remarkably.
But here, let me say this though. I don't care where the leaks came from. I hope they prosecute anybody that did.
I'm not disagreeing with that point. I'm saying what were the leaks that came out?
There's-
There was going to be an indictment. It didn't say who was going to be indicted. That would be relevant.
There's others. I can't get specific with them, but there's multiple.
I mean, this guy-
the real
this guy-
dangers were the leaks of actual presidential conversations with foreign leaders.
But that's not coming from the Justice Department, though. That's coming from his inner circle.
Well, it's not the inner circle. They think it came from, again, the career people. You have people that are there from administration to administration, but they tend to be more progressive, more liberal in leanings, and there was a real problem with them actually trying to subvert this administration.
Well, I don't know what's got to be done, but it's got to be cleaned up. I mean, you can't sit there and run the White House and have all this stuff coming against you. I don't know what you do. You just have to clean it out, I guess, and tell everybody to get out.
Well,
what do you think, Frank?
Leaks have been a problem for every presidential administration in the modern era.
This is the first time I've heard about it. Maybe I'm just kind of...
Actually, this is a little bit related, but a little unrelated. It was interesting this week. Brian Kilmeade on Fox has a new book coming out about President Jackson, and it was interesting. He's made the comparison between Jackson and Trump. Trump has Jackson's picture behind his desk and likes him, but they said that Jackson had a stack of 20 newspapers on his desk that he went through every day. So this idea that Trump is this anomaly because he's so focused on the news and so focused on fake news, they said Jackson effectively in the moment, at the time was exactly the same way. It was just all print media, and that he would go through them and identify writers and say, who is this guy? You go talk to him, find out why he wrote this. They said that was really very similar even 200 years ago.
Yeah, it's not a new phenomenon. Every president that in my lifetime has complained bitterly about leaks from their administration.
Paul Manafort and Rick Gates, I think, was just indicted.
Yes.
What? I guess he's gone back to what he thinks is a crime that was committed.
No, this is one of the arguments about special prosecutors. You have to look at what their charge is, because if it's a broad charge, then they can do a lot of things, and they are allowed to follow any criminal activity that they uncover in the process.
That's what
and that's
the law
what they
permits.
did here.
Okay.
And these criminal activities go back years and years.
2010.
No, they go back to 2006. The reason he's not prosecuted on more counts is there are actually some statute of limitations that don't allow it. But all of these things are unrelated to the campaign and completely predate Trump even entering the presidential race.
It was a big deal for him to come out and charge someone. And
But more than just that, somebody pled guilty. Don't forget that.
Oh, that young boy that kept trying to get...
Well,
that young
he's
boy
not a young boy, first of all.
That ran around trying to get somebody to listen to him about Russia, and nobody would.
But the president tweeted during the campaign was a really brilliant fellow.
Well, but the president does that about anybody that supports him.
Yes, and you know what? It's okay to hold the president responsible for his own words.
You can hold him responsible.
Let me
My
ask you
point is it doesn't give
What
any
did-
real
What
import.
did he do? He lied to the FBI.
I can tell you. You
But
want to know
what
what
did he do that was wrong? What did he do?
That we know about so far?
Yeah.
Well, what we know that he did, in
Right.
addition to lying, was scrubbing a bunch of the evidence. He shut down a bunch of email accounts and stuff and deleted them from computers in order to try to hide them.
Every connection that he had with the higher-ups in the campaign, his offers were rebuffed and actually criticized.
Nobody took
and
the bait.
the professor.
Nobody. They were setting him up.
The professor.
We don't know the answer to that question yet. Let's be honest.
Well, and let's be a little.
For example, like the meeting that took place that Donald Trump Jr. had with the
Russian
lady and stuff. Paul Manafort was present for that meeting. We
And
don't know
walked
what
out
he
of it.
will say about that.
And walked out of
but
it.
the purpose,
And walked
that's
out
what
of it.
Donald Trump says.
Well,
but we don't know what Manafort said because he refused to cooperate.
Well, the professor in Scotland that this other guy says he coordinated with is now denying a lot of the claims that this boy
But
has
he's
made.
a known Russian agent, so
Well, yeah, he is.
big deal.
Well, we know that, and that's why the campaign rebuffed his efforts.
So the point of that is that Manafort refused to cooperate with the investigation. So we don't know what he would have said. What we do know is that this particular individual who pled guilty is listed in the plea agreement as being cooperative.
All right, let me tell you what he lied
In other words,
about.
he's turning on.
Let me tell you what he actually lied about. Now, look, lying is lying.
Yeah.
You know, Martha Stewart went to prison for lying to the FBI, but here's what he lied about. He said that he wasn't with the campaign when he met with this guy. Okay?
Right.
So he was accepted preliminarily, just sort of like a phone call. Yes, we're going to have you as an advisor in early March. And he met with this guy on March the 14th. Mm-hmm. That's the lie.
Well,
so he said it was before. Now, he wasn't really even with the campaign formally, but technically early March he had been informed he would be, and he met with the guy on March 14th.
And the information, the timeline of this is very important. All right. A month before it was publicly announced that the DNC had been hacked, this professor tells him that Russia has, quote, dirt on Hillary Clinton and has thousands of emails of hers.
And where did that come from?
That's what this Papadopoulos is reporting.
Did that come from Podesta?
No, the Podesta group was illegally working with them.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It does not come from that illegal group that was associated?
No, this is from the DNC.
I know, but
the emails were hacked from the DNC.
But
the point is, this guy was telling this a month before it was even publicly known that this had happened, and more importantly, months before WikiLeaks announced that they had all these things.
And what did the campaign tell this boy when he offered it? No, we don't want it.
Actually, that's not what it said. It said that when they were talking about trying to arrange a meeting with Donald Trump, that they said that wasn't going to happen. It did not say that they weren't interested in the information.
My point is on this lie.
And in fact, we know later that Donald Trump goes to this meeting believing they were going to give him this information.
The lie that they're claiming this boy made is the difference between saying
he's not
early
a boy,
March,
he's a grown man.
Early March and March 14th. That's what the lie is. Early March and March 14th.
So he said that he did have the meeting.
He said that he had the meeting before he was really with the campaign, but he was technically with the campaign in early March. The meeting was March 14th.
Okay.
So that's what the lie is based on. It's based on about a week's discrepancy.
You also don't know what else they had.
Wait a minute. Let me ask this. Was there anything illegal with him meeting with someone to see if there was some dirt about Hillary that could be put out?
I think that there's something entirely illegal about meeting with foreign agents to discuss an American election. Yeah, I do think so.
Well, then the Hillary campaign will be in trouble over that because they did it too. They actually paid for the dossier and then lied about paying for it.
First of all, I don't mind that criticism as long as we tell what the facts actually are.
Okay.
The facts are that a Republican donor hired that is the facts.
Hired who? Finish that sentence.
This group that
Fusion GPS.
That's right.
And was
Let
anything?
me finish the story.
Okay.
All right. Don't interrupt me.
All they hired was Fusion GPS.
That's right. They hired this group to do this background opposition research on Donald Trump.
On who else?
Let me finish, John.
No, add your detail. Who else did they hire to do it?
Why don't you just tell the story,
I'm
John?
just going to add the truth.
No. I'm not saying a word. You tell us the story in all of your wisdom.
But they also hired
because nobody else can talk but you. Go ahead, John.
Investigate
other
Republican
candidates. Go ahead, John.
Yes or no?
Go ahead, John.
Did they hire him just to investigate?
I'm not under oath here, John. You just tell your story.
Go ahead, Franklin. You've got the floor.
The facts are that this started with a Republican hiring them to do this research. And while it was going on, hold on, let me finish.
What was the Republicans' research supposed to do?
Find dirt on Donald Trump.
Okay.
And that's how the communications with this Steele fellow got started.
No. That is where you are misleading people by being a lawyerly talker.
Fusion GPS hired Fusion.
When did they hire?
Let me finish. For God's sakes,
well,
do you
tell
just
the truth
love your voice?
Tell the truth when you're doing it. And be straightforward
Nobody
about the
can
facts.
tell the truth if you get interrupted every 14 seconds.
Well, then quit telling a lie every 14
seconds.
seconds.
Let him finish, John. Be quiet now.
Is it like this at your house every morning?
Go ahead, Franklin.
No, because we don't lie every 14 seconds.
I want you to come back after he finished talking.
Good morning, John. Let me correct you on that. It's not really a good morning,
Hey,
Lisa.
Franklin. Franklin.
You're lying, Lisa. These aren't corn flakes. These are generic flakes.
Go ahead,
Please.
Franklin. Go ahead, Franklin. You've got the floor.
The facts are that this dossier had been paid for by Republicans and Democrats.
Wrong. Completely wrong.
It's true.
Completely wrong.
Well, if you get out of your Fox bubble,
That
you'll
is a
find out.
completely wrong statement.
I agree.
It's also true, as far as I can tell, that this dossier was never used by the Clinton campaign, as far as I can
No,
tell.
it was just leaked to the press and used by the press on their behalf. That's the law
Why
you're
did they spend $10, $11, $12 million? I keep hearing.
By the way, the
different
Obama
numbers.
campaign is now implicated as well.
Where did that money?
And guess
Who
what?
authorized that money?
That's why the Podesta group is being investigated. And I'm all for that.
Because of the money?
They were doing some of this opposition research at the same time they were also representing some of these folks like Paul Manafort was doing. I'm all for investigating that, and I don't run like lily-livered little cowards from these investigations like some people I did.
Do you think we'd get anywhere if we quickly ran an investigation on the DNC chair lady? What's her name? Deborah Wasserman Schultz. I think she's got a lot of information that could be
Okay, investigate it.
I wish we could. Why,
well, what's stopping the Trump Justice Department
I don't know.
Are you blaming Obama for the Trump Justice Department not doing something? If you think that's an issue, do it.
I'm blaming both sides right now.
There's no both sides. You guys run the Justice Department. If you believe that, do it.
I think our head DA, what's his title?
Jeff Sessions.
Jeff Sessions. What's his deal?
Well, first off,
he's
we don't
too
know
laid back for me.
Look, you don't know what they're doing, and you shouldn't know what they're doing.
Well, I agree, but I'm telling you something. He's not moving fast enough.
Let me correct the factual timeline.
When he talks, his eyes roll up in his head. You can't get anything out of it.
Let me correct the factual timeline that Franklin laid out, and I'll tell you where.
All right, I want to hear your version now.
He's not technically not telling you the truth, but he is misleading you.
Okay, let's hear it.
First off, the Washington Free Beacon, which was a bunch of people that are basically never Trump people,
right?
They did hire Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS and the Steele guy are two completely separate entities.
Of course they are.
They hired Fusion GPS, and they asked them to do opposition research, not just on Donald Trump. They asked it to do on several of the Republican
16
candidates. I don't know how many they paid them, but they paid them for multiple candidates. Right. So that in and of itself tells you they didn't hire them just to target Donald Trump, the way he's sort of implying with the way he tells the story. Secondly, now listen to this, none of the information that was compiled by Fusion GPS for the Washington Free Beacon ended up in the Trump dossier. None of it. All of it was compiled, given to them, and they actually stopped paying for the services before the Steele guy was ever hired. The Steele guy was never hired when the Washington Free Beacon was paying for the research. The Steele guy was hired after the DNC, the Hillary Rodham Clinton campaign, and amazingly now we know this week, the Obama for America campaign paid about $15 million. I take that back, about $12 million. $12 million to Fusion GPS. And guess what? They laundered the money through a law firm. They didn't pay them directly. They hired a law firm who then turned around and hired them. And the head lawyer of that firm was sitting at the desk while the DNC people denied paying this. He's the guy who actually did it and laundered the money. You could actually charge them probably with money laundering because they skirted campaign laws, funneled the money to a law firm who then paid for opposition research.
No, they didn't.
None of the dossier was funded by Republicans. The dossier was completely funded by the DNC, by Hillary Clinton, and by Barack Obama. And here's the really amazing part. $12 million was paid to them, and all of them have gone on record as saying they don't know who authorized it.
You think they don't know who authorized it, Franklin? You think that's a lie?
It's a common campaign tactic.
That nobody knows
money.
That nobody knows.
Laundering money.
Actually,
no, hold, let me finish. It's a bad practice. It's not illegal. and it's done by campaigns all
let
the
me
time.
ask you a question.
And here's what they do. They hire the law firm to obtain information, and then the law firm goes out to different groups like Fusion GPS, and then they hire those people.
Well, does the head
so that
lawyer sit beside them when they're giving sworn testimony?
But that's the issue there, because, in fact, the statement was probably true, that they didn't pay Fusion GPS. They paid the law firm.
That's the definition of money laundering.
No, it's not.
Well,
It's the definition
let me
of
ask you a question.
money
Have organized crime figures been prosecuted for doing that very same arrangement?
Not unless it's
Absolutely.
illegal.
That's
not
what
unless
money
it's
laundering is.
Not unless it's illegal
That's what
activity, and
money
that's not
laundering
illegal
is.
activity.
That's what money laundering and racketeering
That's
is.
absurd.
I mean, why should a law firm be kept keep private where they spent the money? Why should that be a
Well, guess what? Do you know why that head of that firm was sitting there beside him at the table? So he could claim attorney-client privilege and not have to give the
Exactly
actual
right.
truth,
That's exactly right.
which is a way to lie legally.
So what could we do to this law firm right now? There was $12 million went through this.
Probably
law firm.
nothing.
Well, first off, here's the real point. There's nothing actually illegal from paying for this information. The problem here is the Democrats have spent over a year saying there was collusion with the Russian government, with Russian agents on the behalf or on the part of the Trump campaign, and it now turns out the only collusion that was actually going on was between the Russians through the Steele dossier with the Democrats. They're the people that colluded with a foreign government to influence an election.
President Trump insists that there was no collusion, and they've
The
been
collusion was on the Democrats'
investigating
behalf.
for over a year now.
This information in the Steele dossier
No, they
came
haven't been
directly
investigating
from
it for
Russian
a year.
agents.
How long have
Russian
they been investigating
agents.
it? How long is this?
Actually, they have, Franklin. The FISA warrants went out a year
the,
ago spring.
The Justice Department investigation.
And
didn't
guess
start
what?
then.
Apparently, the FBI actually paid some on this dossier and then used it to justify the FISA warrants that they've now gotten a lot of these people. Now, don't get me wrong. They got the people doing things they shouldn't have done, but the warrants were actually based on opposition research funded by the DNC.
And according to the intelligence communities that are still there, when you take out the salacious sex-related parts of the dossier, the other information they've been able to verify.
They haven't verified any of the anything that was claimed in it that
You
was
don't
criminal.
know what they verified or not.
And how do you know that?
I just know what they
By
testified
leaks.
to Congress.
By leaks.
By leaks.
What they testified
Again.
to Congress.
Look, if there was
Publicly. On television, John.
Franklin,
Did you watch it?
Do you agree that Steele was actually cooperating with Russian agents to get this information? Do you?
Say yes,
I
Franklin.
would assume that he had to.
Do you agree that it's obvious that the DNC, the Hillary Clinton campaign, and the Obama campaign funneled money through this law firm to fund the dossier?
Say yes, Franklin. Just say yes.
Yes or no?
Just say
I
yes.
think they funneled money to do research on him. Whether they knew they were funneling
All right,
this
I'll
dossier
give
is
you
a
that. I
different
don't know if
question.
they knew it or not, but it happened, right?
Sure.
So
Yep.
the only collusion with Russian agents is on the behalf of the DNC and the Democratic campaign, not the Trump.
Say yes,
you
Franklin.
agreed now, basically, to proof of a chain that connects the Democrat effort to elect Hillary Clinton with Russian agents.
Say
and
yes.
collusion.
Just say yes, Franklin.
What I've agreed to is what facts are.
That shows collusion with Russian
And
agents.
I, unlike you, am not terrified of this investigation.
terrified of
Yes,
it
you
either.
are.
No, I'm not,
You've been
Franklin.
complaining
My
about
point
it for
is-
6 months.
Can I give my opinion?
Feel free.
I think the Russian investigation that's been going on over a year just actually got started in the last week.
It actually found some facts.
It found. I really
it
think
didn't
it's just
find
started. I think we're going to get to the bottom of
Well,
something in the next
some
year.
of us in this room said
We
months
kn-
ago
we
we'll
now-
have Democrats arrested for this.
Okay, fine. I have no problem with that. I'm not complaining about it. You guys are apoplectic
We're
about
not
it.
apoplectic.
Yeah, you are.
What we'd like is the same level of attention that's been paid for over a year now out of the media claiming that there's a connection
Well-
to Trump to be now focused on the fact that the only proven connection is to
Let me
Hillary.
be clear about it. It's not a Democrat who keeps going on television and blowing sunshine and roses up the rear end of Vladimir Putin. It's the President of the United States.
But it was
who
the
keeps saying
Democrats
what a
that
great
were
guy
actually
he is.
cooperating with him
Okay?
to try and win
Let's
the
be
election.
also clear. All of the intelligence officials
how much
say
money-
one thing very clearly without any reservation.
How much money?
The preferred candidate for the Russians was not Hillary Clinton. It was Donald Trump.
How much
were
money?
they helping
How
Hillary
much, how
Clinton?
much money
Why
did
were they
Hillary get
helping
from
her?
the Russians?
Millions?
I don't know.
Millions.
What happened to our uranium? I mean, why would we do
I'm
that?
happy to talk about that too. Now that we have a timeline of what actually happened.
Okay.
Actually, millions.
Guess
Bill Clinton
what?
got
Guess
millions
what?
in speaker
Guess what?
fees.
All of those donations that went to the Clinton campaign by those people, it turns out, were made before she was Secretary of State.
What do you think we ought to have an
Of course,
investigation?
because they knew she was the heir apparent.
They knew she was going to be named Secretary of State.
And
Really?
no, they knew she was not only going to be named Secretary of State, they knew she was the heir apparent to probably be
Guess
president.
what? The person who made those donations wasn't even on the board of that company.
And guess
when
what
it
else?
happened.
The main
Is
reporter,
that irrelevant?
the main reporter, Evan Perez for CNN, the justice correspondent, is a former worker with Glenn Simpson, the Fusion GPS co-founder. So that's why, and by the way, CNN never disclosed that in any of their reporting. They worked together on the Wall Street Journal, co-wrote pieces together, and are personal friends. And this guy is reporting on all of this, slamming the Trump administration, and never mentions, oh, by the way, I'm personal friends and former co-workers with the founder of the firm that put the dossier together.
Now then, Hillary, as of yesterday, was in Chicago, and she started blaming everything on Fox News. It's all their problem.
She's never to blame for anything. I would recommend that she watch Orange is the New Black a lot to prepare for her future.
I hate to say it, guys, but we're out of time. We must go. We have much more we could discuss this morning. But
We sure could.
I know you've got to get to work, Franklin and John, and I've got a place I've got to go. And I just want all of our audience to
By the way,
know how much we appreciate
the
it.
Podesta Group also represented Uranium One.
Where is that place you have to go?
I'm going to the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, well, that's a good place to
To a
go.
meeting.
That's a good place.
All right, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire.